Okay, come on, I said record. And while we're waiting, share screen now for you, Ravi, so you're good to share.
Okay. Should I wait until you go through the introduction?
Okay, somebody says they have no mic and no camera, old computer. Well, as long as they can hear us. Oh, yeah, okay. Let me take care of this one.
Is that last you?
They can see you. So,
Oops.
If you can see the screen.
How are you doing?
Okay. Well, they were in chat, so.
Okay.
All right, so I am Carol Edholm, president of SEAPEX. Welcome to SEAPEX Virtual Stamp Show 2020. And this is our third presentation this morning with Ravi Vora out of Colorado, and he's doing U.S. Consular Services paid with consular revenue stamps. And if you're in the wrong place, well, you're going to enjoy this presentation anyway. Ravi, it's all yours. Everybody, please mute yourselves until you have a question.
Hang on, Sir Carol. I lost my screen.
Uh-oh. Okay.
This is called Murphy's Law.
Yeah, of course.
I have to figure out how.
Okay. Yeah. Share screen at the bottom.
Well, no, I'm not getting anything. I got. Hang on a second.
Okay. Oh, we still got people coming in.
Ravi, can I help you?
Sorry?
Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get, you see, I got a blank Zoom on my screen. What I may do is leave and then come back again.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
Have you your presentation open on your computer?
Not yet. I'm going to open it.
You should.
We trained you.
Now we got it. We got it. Okay.
I trained you the other day. Presentation
good deal.
first.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, now I have to find my screen.
One here. Okay.
Hang on a second. I'm going to open it.
Oh, almost everybody's here.
Good. Oh. Why am I having trouble?
Well, I do have you clicked for share screen.
Yep, I do.
I think he's facing difficulty.
Yeah, no, I got it. I got it. Okay, can you guys see?
Yes, wonderful.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your interest in this presentation. Somewhat of an obscure subject matter about the use of U.S. consular revenue stamps for consular services. It's a subject that I have been interested for more than 30 years because of my greater interest in U.S. Department of State postal history. And I think if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If it can be easily answered, I'll do it, or we will wait toward the end for Q&A. All right, so basically what we're gonna cover today is the genesis of the consular services that goes back to early 1800, where the consular revenue stamps were introduced. And so one of the peculiarities is about the absence of essays and proofs of this particular issue. They were issued from 1906 to 1954, so relatively long duration. Then we'll go and review some of the interesting different stamps used on documents. And then we'll go to a variety of different consular services provided by U.S. consuls around the world for different services. And last but not the least, we will also show the use of consular services in conjunction with those of the foreign governments. And we'll wrap it up. So we'll go to the first one. So the history, it would be good to get a quick preview. So when the Department of State was formed, in 1784, initially Congress had given no money. And so almost all of the appointments were voluntary. And the consuls or diplomats were expected to cover their own expenses by allowing them to conduct businesses and collect the fees for the services they rendered. This became somewhat cumbersome, but just to kind of give you the magnitude of services they provided, the Congressional Act of 1896 defined 107 different services that were provided by U.S. consuls. Later, they consolidated down to 49, but that's still a lot. On April 5th, 1906, there was a major reorganization of the consular services by Congressional Act. And the intent here was to keep track of the consular revenue services, the revenue from the consular services by distributing special consular stamps, revenue stamps. And then the consuls were required to turn in the record of stamps used and the services provided. So effectively, this was a way to keep track and also avoid any, shall we say, misuse or consuls making money on the side. There were effectively three major designs. The first design that was issued in 1906 is on the left, which basically is a very simple design, was American Consular Services. Then in 1924, they slightly changed the wording, same design, called it American Foreign Services. And then in 1925, they kept the same wording, but changed the design completely. One of the tidbits I'll share with you is the reason for the simplicity of the design. Just so happens that about 25 years ago, I had the opportunity to visit Bureau of Engraving's archives and met with their staff. And going through the record, it became clear that there was very little time between when the Congress enacted this act to require the State Department to obtain the stamps and have it distributed, versus when the use of the stamp became effective. It was less than 3 months. And so State Department basically asked the Bureau of Engraving to come up with something that's simple, easy to use, and easy to produce. But the key thing is that the sale of these stamps are only restricted to the consular staff. And so in theory, you cannot have unused or mint stamps, although they do exist from some of the leftovers, but they're quite uncommon. So as I mentioned, during my visit to the Bureau, I found a few examples of record in their book of essays. And I'm showing here, this is, by the way, official photograph that Bureau of Engraving gave me. And you can see the progression of the design on the left, a blank tablet with the 3 different values. And then you see, shall we say, montage of different denomination, different designs. And then the last design that's on the left for essay of 25 cents and $10. Also, as a side remark, the denominations of these stamps were from 25 cents to $10 in the beginning. And then in 1952, they issued a $20 denomination. So in a way, U.S. Department of State is the unique institution to have issued the highest denomination stamp, either for postage, official stamps, or for revenue. So this is a first example we're showing relatively early. It's used in a document. What's unusual is that it has a plate number. still attached to the stamp on the lower left below the blue seal. In fact, that is very hard to see for some reason. And it was basically a notary service that certified the signature of the applicant. This was by U.S. Consul Thomas Allen. And they did define service number and the fee, the amount of fee paid. This is another example where we see multiple denominations and usages. This particular service was provided by U.S. Consul Grout in Milan in 1917, in the middle of the World War I. It was actually a lengthy deposition from different people in Italy and Trieste. And it took over 2 weeks from June 5th to 21st. The deposition fee was quite complicated. They charged $10 for the first 500 words and then 50 cents for each additional word. The fee charge in this document was $64, which works out to be a deposition for 3,900 words. That $64 was paid for in form of two $2, two $5, and five $10 stamps. It's a unique usage of fairly high value stamps and multiple denominations. There were instances where the consul had to bisect the stamp. What had happened is that in the early 1900s through 1930s, one of the most common service they provided was certifying export documents going to US from around the world. Service fee for that was $2.50. It saw the highest usages. So in the 1920s, various consuls were short of $2.50 stamp, did not get them replaced in time. So in this particular, on the left, you see a pair of export documents that were certified export invoices from Bern, Switzerland. And the consul in Switzerland bisected $5 stamp into $2.50. The left document has the bottom of the $5 bisect, and the middle document in the blue is the top bisect of the same stamp. It's somewhat uncommon to be able to find matching bisects. So that's one of the things collectors like us look for, and sometimes we get lucky. Also less common was a bisect of $10. In this case, it was bisected to pay for a $5 fee in Hamburg, Germany in 1934. And it had to do with Pan American's compliance of a ship sailing to US and its compliance with the Pan American Sanitary Code. We'll talk about that a little more later. So one of the most important basic service that consuls provided to US citizens and foreigners wanting to visit was providing passports, validating passports, immigration, visas, and visitors visas. So here we see a Miss Dolan that had received, was issued a US passport in 1907 in Washington, D.C. And when she arrived in Bordeaux, France, the U.S. Consul General validated the authenticity of her passport and herself for further use in France. And a service fee in that case was $1. And then she subsequently registered with the French police station, as you can see on the various markings. This is a fairly early usage. It's certainly not the earliest known usage. The earliest known usages of the consular revenue stamps are in the second half of 1906. As you might see that the US passports issued turn of the century were not nice little convenient booklets as we see now, but they were full-scale big document that then had to be folded and used. This shows you a full what the US passports look like. This one, the service was provided July 10, 1907 by the US Consul General in London. The passport was actually issued in Department of State in Washington, signed by the Secretary of State Root, who subsequently was involved in diplomacy in World War I. And this large single format continued until early 1900s before it went to the booklet. Also then subsequently, the bearer of the passport applied for a visa to go to Turkey in Paris. So on the back, which is, you can see the cropped image of the Turkish visa issued by the Turkish consul in Paris using 20 piastre Turkish revenue stamp. This, we would also call it as a combination usage of US consular revenue stamp used with those of the other foreign countries. So immigrant visa was an important service provided, and for that in 1952, the fee for getting an immigrant visa was $20 plus a $5 for application. So actually the $20 consular revenue stamp on a full document is quite uncommon. To my knowledge, there are only 2 known examples, and this is one of the 2. In this case, it was issued by the US Embassy in Mexico in 1954. And as I said, the application fee was paid by $5 revenue stamp, and then a $20 revenue stamp was applied for the immigrant visa. And so this is quite an attractive, it's a very large document. So exhibiting physically, it becomes a challenge. We give you some other examples. Alien registration was a service that was provided by US consuls around the world. So on the left, you see American consul in Munich, Germany, did register Miss Hempel as an immigrant alien, and administered the oath for which $1 was charged. On the right, you see in 1920, American consulate in Gothenburg, Sweden, issued a visa for a mother and daughter, Miss Natalia and her daughter. And at that time, the fee was $10. It was interesting that at that time, the US government allowed the parent and the child to be on the same visa. Somewhat uncommon, it's no longer allowed. This is another example of a US visa on a foreign passport. By 1920, the fee had gone up. This is a passport of a Czech citizen, and he was issued a visa to go to US in Prague by US consul using $9 consular revenue stamp. On the other side, you see that the Czech revenue stamp was also used to issue the passport. This is a very unusual document. It's a US visa issued to a stateless person. In the previous examples, we saw that those who received US visa to come here they had their own passport of their citizenship of the foreign country. In this particular case, in 1941, in the midst of the World War II, U.S. Consul in Cork, Ireland, received an application from a person, a lady called Nora Peterson. She she must have escaped the Nazi invasion and had no passport to prove her citizenship. And I think they considered the circumstances and gave her a visa to a stateless person. And knowing the financial difficulty, they actually discounted the fee to $8 from $10. It's the only known example of, shall we say, special reduction in the consular fee for issuing visa, uh, which doesn't happen too often even now. So now we move to the next type of service. As I said, the export and import are some of the most important activities for centuries between US and foreign countries. And one of the most common service provided was to certify bill of lading or export invoice of shippers of sending goods to US from foreign countries. And interestingly, this fee of $2.50 became effective in 1868. And for literally 90 years, that fee was never increased. So the first example on the left you see is American Deputy Consul General in London certified the export of invoice using a $2.50 stamp. On the right, it's a different issue, more later one, 1928, the third issue. And in this case, it's export of some roofing rags from Florence, Italy. There were also provisions because a number of times the foreigners wanted to return American goods back to the United States. By customs regulations, there were no customs duty when American goods were returned. Typically, most of them were really shipping containers, drums, and other things that are recycled. But we have a couple of interesting usages. On the left, you see a return of goods, but actually it was an American tourist who left behind some of personal belongings, and they were being shipped back to that citizen. And so this particular certificate is instead of commercial shipping containers or packages, it was personal goods. So that's a somewhat an unusual usages. And the fee was reduced to $1 for return of the American goods, as opposed to $2.50 for the export of foreign goods to the US. The next important service US consuls were involved in had to do with the public health. I think with the current epidemic we are suffering, this may be an interesting perspective to have. So in around 1890s, there was an outbreak of cholera in Europe, and there was a Congressional Act of 1893 that required U.S. consuls at foreign ports to monitor and report health condition in their areas, as well as to certify ships sailing to U.S. ports that there were no infectious diseases on the ship. They were assisted by a creation of a marine hospital service. Actually, that started in 19th century, but by 1893, they had become fairly large, and surgeons or the medical staff were sent to various ports to assist the U.S. consuls in monitoring the health and diseases in the foreign ports. What we see here is, and they were also required to send the report back to the U.S. Public Health Service, which was under Department of Treasury. we see here an interesting document. On the top right is a full report that U.S. Consul in Kingston, Jamaica prepared in 1932. You probably have difficulty reading it, but when you get a copy, it actually shows the number of cases of different diseases in Kingston and surrounding areas. And that was required by this law. But then he also certified a particular ship sailing from Kingston to New York, saying it was free of any diseases or infections. The reports were actually forwarded back to the Treasury in an envelope. So we show an example of an envelope. This one is not the same as 1932, but a similar one from 1916. A U.S. consulate in Kingston, Jamaica, sent a report similar to the one we see on the top right. The fee for the sanitary clearance services were about $5 throughout the period. In 1924, there was a Pan American sanitary code established that the U.S. was a member of. But here we show three different examples. On the top, on the left side is a document giving certification from Antwerp, Belgium. But what's more important is that there was no U.S. surgeon or public health service present. So the ship was cleared by the U.S. consul without any examination by U.S. public health service doctor. There's a rubber stamp on the left that's fairly uncommon. On the top right is one in 1924 from Valletta, Malta. And again, they did not have any public health service doctor. And so they had to do without it. The bottom one is 1937 from Belfast, Northern Ireland. And it complies with the quarantine requirement of Pan American Sanitary Code. But more importantly, there was an assistant U.S. public health surgeon who also co-signed the certificate along with the U.S. consul in Belfast. What is unusual and not as commonly known is that in some consulates, actually they also provided court or judicial services, which is very uncommon. This particular example is from 1910, where the U.S. Consul General Orzo in Sauk area actually undertook a court hearing, and it had to do with the judicial settlement between the Methodist Episcopal Church of Korea and its treasurer, and a service fee for that was $2. And as I mentioned here, this is the only recorded use of consular revenue on court proceedings by the consuls. The other thing that U.S. consular services included was to certify the foreign officials and their signatures on legal documents. So we give 3 different examples here, 3. The one on the left is 1907 from U.S. Consul in Newcastle on Tyne, and he basically certifying the signature of a district registrar for a probate. And again, the fee was only $2. It's a fairly early use. The middle one is certified. It's from Bern, Switzerland, and in this one, it's certifying the acting chancellor of Canton of Bern, so fairly middle level official of Switzerland. The last one in 1932, U.S. Consul in Havana certified the seal and signature of Assistant Secretary of State of Cuba. So it's a fairly high level foreign official who was certified by the U.S. Consul. These are fairly uncommon. Other thing that also did is to recertify notary of the foreign officials. The one on the left you see is a 1928 from Leghorn, Italy. It had to do with a subpoena from Rhode Island, and it was further certified with the Italian notary. On the right, you will see U.S. consul from Rangoon, Burma in 1940, certified Mr. Jones being a public notary in Rangoon, Burma. For some reason, U.S. consular services documents from Burma are harder to find. I don't know why. So U.S. consuls also served as official notary themselves. Here we see a U.S. Deputy Vice Consul Gould in Seoul, Korea in 1910. He notarized annual account of American Missionary Cable House and charged $2. A pair of $1 stamps, fairly uncommon to find this early. On the right, you see a pair of documents. Actually, it's a front and back of page, sequential pages 89 and 90. And in 1926, U.S. Consul in Leipzig, Germany, notarized authenticity of a German attorney, and also there was another official that was that they certified. So dual certification is also uncommon. The business services was one of the more important things they did. The service fees were $2. On the left, we see a German insurance policy holder's claim on a Russian insurance company in the U.S. and fee of $2 was charged. On the right, we see actually a transfer of U.S. stocks by Cuban descendant who owns some stocks in California, and he certified it with the $2 consular revenue stamp. The affidavit was further certified by the Cuban officials using $1.30 of Cuban revenue stamps. Another example of combination revenue usages. There were also interesting life events recorded by the consulars. On the left, we see certifying a marriage certificate in Spain. Originally, the marriage was notarized by Spanish authorities in Vigo, Spain, using Spanish consular revenue stamps, pretty colorful. You can see them on the front page. And on the second page, in order to show, we folded the first page. The U.S. consul did the notary of the marriage certificate by applying $2 consular revenue stamp. This was an important service because it enabled the spouses who, if they were not foreigners, would be able to get a visa, immigrant's visa to come to U.S. The middle document is actually certified by U.S. Deputy Consul General in London in 1907, and he is notarizing probe of last will and testament. Again, the service fee was $10. The last one on the right is very interesting and very personal. U.S. Consul General in Shanghai in 1935 certified the remains of the deceased wife of an American who was bringing back home the cremation urn and life records, which is typical of the Jewish family, and personal jewelry. So it's a very unusual usage that was certified that involves death of a U.S. citizen. We want to also show a deposition involving the largest consular fee that on a document is known. This is in 1932. It was undertaken in London. The deposition of the testimony involved over 12,950 words. And if you break down that $657 fee, it's based on the same rate that we discussed before. And you had to use $2.50 stamp, one $5 stamp, and 64 copies of $10 revenue stamp. A rather large sum of money. Presumably it was a business document. This one is also multiples of 3 different designs of stamps. Again, it was for making copies. And this is in Barbados in around 1925. We don't have exact dates because there's only a portion of the document now available. And the fee for making copies was 50 cents for first 100 words, and then 25 cents for every additional 100 words. Just to kind of show you, in those days, they did not have photocopy machines or scanners, so this had to be done manually, a rather laborious process. The U.S. Consul charged $36.25 and used 19 of the 25-cent first issue, one of the very large blocks known, used 17 copies of 50 cents and 23 copies of $1. It's one of the most colorful and the largest multiple denomination usage that is recorded. Another important service that U.S. Consuls provided had to deal with the legal aspects of patents. And we're going to show some examples of interesting things. This particular example is a 1931 patent on processing or improving the process of crude oil or crude oil refining, invented by an American called Irvin Jones. And he had assigned the patent to Koppers Corporation of Pittsburgh, which is still operating in a different business. And it was recorded by the U.S. Consul with a $2 stamp for filing purposes. I think it was in Germany. This particular example is from England. This was a patent to improve processes and aperture for producing artificial filament and threads and etc. And this was as a process of preparing a document to file with the U.S. Patent Office. And the service fee again was $2. 1938, this is a patent related to light sensitive paper. This is about the time when copying machines were coming to the world. And this particular was a very complex, big document where first original documents were in the Dutch, and then they were translated into English, and then they were certified by the U.S. Council in Eindhoven, Netherlands. This patent was issued in Sweden in 1938, and it had to do with the production of hydrophosphates, some chemicals. This had more to do with patent interference, so this is another facet of legal issues that U.S. Consuls were involved in certifying. This one is another large document of patent filing from Australia. It had to do with the casing solutions and paints. And first it was issued by the Commission of Patents from Australia, and then further certified by the U.S. Consul there. This particular is a chemical patent issued in Zurich. And this one, again, same $2 service fee. We are now showing various use of consular service stamps with the foreign U.S. document, U.S. revenues. So for my friend Mark, and this is the document issued by U.S. Consul in Bombay in 1918. It was a quitclaim deed document. So it bears the documentary service fee of 50 cents in Ohio, and then the $2 revenue stamp in June of in 1918. In other words, the filing was done through American Consulate in Bombay, and then when it was received in Ohio, 50-cent documentary stamp was applied for filing. Another example of usage between U.S. consular revenue and deed transfer. This required deed transfer, and so it required $2.50 of U.S. property deed transfer stamps and $2 of consular revenue in Alexandria, Egypt. This is a very colorful and interesting usage in 1914, where U.S. Consul in Hanko certified a deed of trust for sale of property by some Chinese owners of a real estate property to the U.S. Presbyterian Church. The service fee for that was $1.50, but previously it had been, the deed was certified by the Chinese authorities using Chinese revenue stamp. Combination of U.S. consular revenue with the Chinese revenues are extremely uncommon. I believe there are only two such examples. This is one of them. This is an interesting usage where it was U.S. consular revenue stamp with the Soviet consular revenue stamps. And basically, the original document bore the signature of a Soviet official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Moscow, and the U.S. consul David Klein in Moscow certified that to be genuine and charged $2. This is one of the most colorful and multiple usage of consular revenue and foreign consulates. It's an example of a multinational insurance company in 1913. Multinational companies were not new, and they date back to 19th century, actually. This particular one is in the Phoenix Assurance Company, I think it was out of the Netherlands, that wanted this document certified by the consuls of different countries where they were operating. So in this particular case, it has the consular revenue stamp of $2 for the U.S. consul services. But prior to that, there was a Dutch revenue stamp applied and a Great Britain stamp, 1 shilling, which was then used for revenue service. And more interestingly, it also has further certification with the consular seals of Netherlands, China, and Siam. Foreign visa revenue stamps are one of the common things. This is a very interesting passport of a very prominent American nurse who was with YWCA during World War II and then became a volunteer with the refugee settlement. So what we see is a passport bearing Miss Steele's photograph. And she visited a number of countries. So we see the consular visa stamps of Egypt, Africa, South Africa, Mozambique, Sudan, Italy. And then because of our extended stay, our passport was about to expire, and then the U.S. consul in Italy renewed the passport and charged $5 revenue stamp, consular revenue stamp. That's on the lower left corner. So in the way we can conclude it is that U.S. consuls provide very large number of services to both U.S. citizens and foreigners. who have reason to do business or visit US in their dealings. The magnitude of the number of services were over 100, which they consolidated down to 49. And as we discussed before, the denominations range from 25 cents all the way to $20. Interestingly, no proofs or essays of consular revenue stamps are known in the private hands, with the exception of a $20 large die proof, which is in my collection. And what this presentation hopefully shows is how important U.S. consular staff provided the services related to America in the global world. So with that, I would like to end the presentation. And if there are any questions or comments, the floor is open.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was wonderful, Ravi. I loved it.
Thank you.
If anybody else has any questions, just unmute yourself.
I have a comment. Mike Mailer.
Yes.
So the document that had the plastered with stamps because of the copying fee
Yes.
reminded me of a similar situation in the United States. Louisiana collected fees for their court documents with Louisiana law stamps
Okay.
between 1880 and
Uh-huh.
1897. Now, if you look at the list of fees,
Yes.
the highest fee was $5. So
Yep.
the highest stamp they made was $5.
Correct.
Come to find out that on some of these, probably something similar, not maybe a deposition, but something that required copying many,
Mhm.
many words by hand.
Right.
And it was 25 cents per 100 words
Yep. So
and covered with $5, the high value stamps, maybe, 50 of them. And you can calculate how many thousands and thousands of words were
yep.
copied to justify that fee.
Expensive proposition, Mike.
Yeah.
So the legal issue must be worth quite a bit for someone to spend large sum of money for copying or depositions. Okay. Well, we finished it a little earlier, so that's good.
Okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? All right. I appreciate it. I guess we can all get some lunch before the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
You all
Ravi.
have
It
a
was
wonderful
wonderful.
time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.